Hello guys, let me first start with wishing you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and thanking you very much for supporting this channel and making this purchase, and I hope you're going to consider this in the future. This reading is going to consist of two parts. First part, important one though, even though it seems to be kind of like a little bit generic. Why is it important? They're general energies. So what does that mean? So let's say we want what we want, right? Let's say we want to buy tiles for the bathroom. So we know what we want to buy, we know our budget and everything else. So we kind of like know our little domain. But there is like a bigger picture. Who is the supplier? What can be done? So you have to work within that system. And this is like what this part is going to tell us. I also drew a rune just to give me basically some kind of like feel for it, and we are going to go in few other cards. These like really important decks. This is Osho Zen. He's like a famous I believe Japanese philosopher. We have karma cards and we have law of attraction. So for example, right, if you for example want to win lottery and you want to send those vibrations out and you have all the negative people around you, that's what's going to tell you. So literally all you would need to do is like stay away from that kind of like stuff, right? So the rune that we got was Vunya reversed. Vunya is a really good rune, even when it's reversed. So this is the rune of happy endings. We are coming into the basically cycle numerologically year number 12, which is basically cycle number 3 numerologically. I'm going to speak a little bit about that later, because oh my gosh, like year number basically 11 is tough. Year number 11 is challenging us on every single thing, and mostly on the things that actually we don't really want to be challenged. So that's something really to take in account. So this is talking about kind influence. This is talking about, hey, look, things are actually going to turn out well, right? It's encouraging rune, but when it's reversed, it kind of gives a little bit of kind of like caution that, for example, in terms of love relationship, maybe we are going to idolize someone. You know what? I say, heck, you know, why not? Usually we are so, I don't know if I want to say jaded. Like, I mean, there are like all kinds of people out there, right? And we are like, oh no, not again, right? So going on the other side, it's probably better, right? But this is also kind of like telling you, put it in perspective. Maybe somebody is looking too good to be true, and that's because he or she is too good to be true. So keep that in mind, because that person might be kind of like a little bit different from what they see. This is like entire year. They are not going to be able to put up the game for a year, especially if you see them on a regular basis. So I am really not worried about that. Also, another thing, if this is referring to business, then it's going to be danger of underhanded dealings, and even those who you consider friends might actually turn on you, and you might not count on them. So again, put that in account when you are making decisions that are including that other people. Now, what I would say with this particular rune, as it kind of like relates for the year number 3, that I would say make sure that at least you give yourself 3 days for kind of like really coming up with an answer. Sort of like, you know, not really mulling it over in these 3 days what to do. Sort of like when you have to reach a decision, put it on a back burner, 3 days on a back burner. When you come back in 3 days, then start deliberating what you want to do. So it's still very good, and this is that protection. Like P is for Vunya. I have my own names. P to me is for protection, and specifically when it comes here, because look, it's kind of like pointing backwards, right? So again, over idolizing means, hey, you know, I have all these friends, you know. I mean, I felt that way when I was moving, and then when the time came, like, I mean, everybody promised, and then one phone call after another, oh, I have a flu, I have this, I have this. So basically you see really who your real friends are. And this is exactly what it's saying. That date could be a surprise. So kind of like keep that in perspective. Already. So let's see what else we have. Let me just first get all the cards out. Oops, and we already have it. We have fighting. Oh, why do we have fighting thing? So let's, one on the floor. Wow, this is a lovely one. It's called Forgiveness. I love this one. And let's grab this one here. This is just a general energy, as it says something in, ooh, this is a really lovely. You know, I'm so excited about this year. Let me zoom this in for you so you can actually have a better view of these guys, and I can kind of like give you a little bit more information. So fighting is probably a good kind of like omen, right? Fighting is like that proverbial knight of swords, which always kind of like can tend to be a little bit edgy, because look, he's like kind of like riveted himself in kind of like some kind of concoction that maybe he cannot even get out. So it almost like appears to me that somebody's like, I mean, so full of steam, the steam is coming out, it's even forming, as you can see here, some kind of like thing here on the side, right? So it is kind of like very important over here. What I really see here is like some kind of like edginess over here. What I really see here, and me being an air sign, I can really tell you how this works. Air sign can be the most easy breezy sign, but it can be tornado, it can be a hurricane, right? So what kind of like chance do you really want to take on this, right? So it is really important when you're dealing with air to kind of like understand that everything here depends on logic. Air is going to say, yeah, I love you, honey, but you are not showing up on time, you are not doing this, you're not doing this, and hence I am leaving you, right? Air is absolutely able to make that kind of stuff. So fire probably would kind of say, okay, well, let's see, let's come up with an action plan how to do that, right? Where, you know, Pentacles would go, okay, so what can you do for me? Like, let's make it more transactional kind of a thing, right? And kind of like water would go, okay, like, I mean, I really feel for you. I'm still going to kind of go and continue with this, right? So it is kind of like talking about an explosive temper and maybe even smoldering rage. And to me, whenever I see people like that, I always know there is pain. And these are strong people. And if you're listening to this, like when you see people who are maybe exploding, you want to do something and you find this like immovable, insurmountable obstacle, these people are conveying some kind of like pain. So when are people getting angry? When their needs are not met. When are people in pain? When their needs are not met. But it's actually even worse when they really feel they will never be met. With anger, like, at least, actually, believe it or not, it's better, because people feel, well, you know, if I do this, like, things are going to be met. So I know it's really hard when you have like something really harsh and edgy coming at you, but maybe you're going to remember my words. The person that you see in front of you raging and having those white knuckles and having all huffing and puffing and maybe being threatening, actually is just like the pussycat in the corner who wants to scratch everything because they're really hurting. So this is why they are showing this kind of like armor over here, because they're covering their wounds with armor. And actually, even though this is preventing, helping them not to get more wounds, it's also preventing them of being healed. So, you know, these people who lash at others, they just like simply prevent themselves of getting love and nourishment they need. If this is like us and getting that kind of stuff, we actually need to realize when we get angry, well, wait a minute, what is it that I have to kind of like let this like steam out? Because hey, love is like out there. Love is like literally something we need to kind of open our arms and get it. And if this is like you, that you find yourself in the situation, just kind of like give yourself a big hug. Ask your friends to give you a hug. It has a very healing thing. Also, another thing that I really tried and that really works, and I tell to my clients, take ballroom dance classes, take salsa lessons, because holding another human and in something that is enjoyable is going to transfer so much good energy. So I really think, given that this is coming for the ambience and environment we are going to find ourselves in it, that this is really talking about that this year is going to be one of the struggle. It's going to be where ambitions will be pushed forward. Many people, especially after year number 11, which is 2, where it's very spiritual, where it's like, really, do I really want to be that kind of person? And here is like, I'm moving forward. So up to this point was like all kind of like those strategizing, but here it is kind of moving forward. So when people move forward, some people try to negotiate and find a deal with others. These are people who are more people oriented. other people try to steamroll through whole thing and kind of like get what they want, right? So you need to understand yourself. So because this is kind of like the general overview, you have to figure out if you really want to be part of something like that. Do you really want something at any cost, or you simply don't want something at every cost, right? Because look what you have over here. You have forgiveness from this other deck, and like to me this is like one of those, the loveliest cards. This is the card that, you know, if you can see, we have like these different chakras over here. So we are already here in this high purple chakra. So your number 11 was all the way here, so we are getting more grounded. So this is again about judging and forgiveness. So even though it could be them being mad, being rude, being crude, I can see cussing and swearing and telling people off and a finger, I can see here a whole bunch of things. How you react to it, it's what your challenge is going to be. Are you going to just like simply engage in their pain and kind of like react back with anger? Or are you going to kind of like neglect yourself and just going to help themselves? You see how many challenges you will actually have there. But look, solution is being offered over here, forgiveness. It's, you know, it's not really about forgiving others in this situation. What I really think that forgiveness has to apply to is that we need to forgive ourselves for having judged others, because judging others always generates kind of like bad brownie points. There's like somebody here maybe who, you know, these people, they're angry with entire world, and my dad is just like it. I get this very, very much. Like whenever everything is perfect, they're still going to find something. We all have those kind of like negative, you know, Sandy, kind of like negative Nancy, kind of like a people around us. So, and of course, maybe sometimes we just like treat these people with a label on it, right? They say if you really want to kind of go higher, not only spiritually, but in your life, you shouldn't kind of like have things with labels. So cat shouldn't have C-A-T kind of like spelled on it. It's a being that kind of is engaging. You see the difference. It's like reading the energy versus reading the label. So here is like basically simply calling, look, you know, understand what is below and behind that armor, that this person is probably, you know, resenting things. And here, like, I mean, we need to kind of like focus on basically intention. What do they really want? And this kind of, imagine if you manage to kind of develop such thick skin that these things are not coming to you, how wonderful would that be? That's why I see this card, but we still didn't get there, right? This also tells me that it may be a time of family healing. I feel that anybody who have hurt you, who have done something, and you know, families have their own histories, especially if there is money involved, or you know, each family has quote unquote their own way. You know, if you watch Game of Thrones, Lancaster always pays his debts, kind of a thing. Story that we see is kind of like over present, but sometimes this is also very limiting, just like this armor. So this also can actually be part of those dynamics. Now, why am I going in such a long intro to tell you this? This is because you guys are on a trajectory of that year number 3, of wishes being fulfilled, of holding on to past dreams. Over the last 2 years, you have been meticulously changing. You have been setting a new path. You have been setting a new direction. You have been also doing lots of bad things, but now you need to forgive yourself. Look, there is like this hypo, and there is like this kind of like baby over here, right? And the story behind here goes, right, that you know, there was like this Rhonda, I think, Rhino, and kind of like she kind of like has a mother. Her mother has like a drinking problem, but she kind of like really wants to become a family pet. And so one day, kind of like she hears, I think, gunfire or something like that, and all the rhinos scatter, and all of a sudden there is like this small human child that is kind of like caught up in the chaos, right? So Rhonda says, come here. She picks him up and runs to safety. So humans now discover this kind of like pair curled up asleep under a tree, and then what they do, they shoot Rhonda with a sleeping dart. So when she awakens, she is in a garden with the little boy and his family. So this is now becoming Rhonda's new family. So as you can see how things can really change from some aggression and some kind of like struggle and white knuckles, things can actually quite work out quite well. And then we are getting this Temperance card. Well, Temperance in the other decks is really shown as an angel who is able to mix this bad and good, because it almost looks like two opposite sides of the equation, right? This is like all the way in the negative, this is all the way in the positive. This is like pretty much what we go to church for, what we pray for, what we hope for. This is like when we are at our best. So I'm not really surprised that actually we got this, like in saying, okay, so there is like this kind of like measurement that needs to happen, and there is like a mix. No, I'm not saying to be in the middle. I'm just like saying that you need to kind of like take every single bolt down from every single thing that you feel guarded, for every single thing that you feel you have made your decision, you have made your verdict over something, because this is also a card of reflection. So if you're going up, and I see many people are going in different direction, because this is a year of advancement, this is a year where we're actually putting things in practice. So if in 2018 you were planning to renovate the house, maybe you're collecting kind of like the ideas, maybe you were kind of getting your estimates, in 2019 you're going to put it in place. If in 2018, like you were trying to, let's say, get married and find a proper partner, and maybe you were running in a whole bunch of people and feeling maybe even a little bit disillusioned and now getting more guarded. No, it's actually not the time to get more guarded and put more bolts in it. It's like saying, look, I'm still learning what works and what doesn't work. So that's why this reflection is very important. You're looking back and saying, okay, this did come back to me and I did like it. This came back to me and I didn't like it. So you kind of like figure out, this I don't want to have anymore, and this, you know, I do want to have way more to have of this. But also you're saying, I can tolerate this and I cannot tolerate that. So you're kind of like creating that proverbial line in sand, which is like a little bit different. So this kind of like boundaries are set up different. Only thing, because we are having here like this naked woman instead of the angel and the water. Like the nakedness is always talking about being authentic and being true to yourself. And like the truth, some people say, oh, just say it the way it is. I like to be honest, but I cannot say, well, he's going to dump you, for example, right? The truth also always, and that's where the difference in between good human and bad human kind of comes to play, is like how you render it. Because here it's talking about the truth mixed with kindness is basically something that kind of like dissolves everything negative coming your way, right? So just like think about Vunya reversed, as I told you, 3 days. So when somebody comes at us, we react back. There is like this bad blood, right? And we say things that maybe we didn't want to say. 3 days delay, the steam is out, right? You wake up in a new garden and you realize, oh wow, you know, this person actually really wants this. So how do I meet his or her needs without sacrificing mine? Because at this stage the rational mind kicks in, and remember, this is all about logic. So if you can find a way to present that in a logical way, most likely you're going to be successful. Okay guys, so let me tell you a little bit about this year number 3, because that's also very important. So year number 3, we were technically in the year number 2, but for some of us was year number 11. So what's the difference? 1 and 1 is 2. And so why it was for somebody 11 and for some other 2. Not everybody can all the time be at the highest spiritual level. So we just like resort down to what we can do. So number 2 is about harmonizing. Number 2 is like, how can we actually improve and get along better and work better, right? But number 11 is like taking that to the much higher level, sort of like thinking about mankind. And funny enough, even though it is about good, when is good needed? Good is needed to erase the bad. So lots of bad things happen in year number 11. Lots of things that maybe we need to kind of really work for. So after a year in which other people's needs kind of eclipsed our own needs, now it is our turn. The 3 year is like really simple and more casual, this like 12-month cycle. And what is really, really important, and advise making this big sign and put it on your fridge: what do I want? Right? You're going to see that all the things that maybe you didn't consciously plan, but they're kind of coming up, are actually really kind of like coming back. So your own long-term happiness and fulfillment are really the central issues here. And the 3 year cycle gives you that opportunity to discover and then create what you believe will actually make you happy. Remember Wunyorun? So what you want is actually attainable, regardless of what appears to be standing in your way. Are challenges going to happen? Do you have a clear road? Nope. No, you don't. But as I told you, like, spend a few days to kind of think through it. Make sure that you have a backup plan, because people will surprise you with how unreliable they are. So direction of your happiness will be uncovered, and you will first have to detect and, as I said, heal the sources of your unhappiness, which you will find have as much to do with what is taking place in the world, as I told you, this is general, as it does also with your own personal situation, because they're like these two puzzles that have to fit together. So it's going to be about direction we take with personal situations, relationships, and also memories. You will really have to feel what you're feeling, and you will need to express those emotions in a way that is really natural for you. We all have different expressions. Yes, some signs are more aloof, some are like just like too kind of like, you know, opening their kind of like water taps too much and cry easily. But this is not to measure that just because you cry over something that you feel deeper or more. Sometimes people cannot cry because they would just like lose it. Just keep in mind, when you see this person like huffing and puffing, angry, that person is like the one who just cannot allow themselves to do that, because they will fall apart. This is how fragile they really, really are. Remember, happiness is a feeling, it's an emotion, and that only comes from inside. And there will be at least one opportunity this year to feel joy as you have never felt it before. Remember, joy. Remember, what do I want? What kind of joy do I want? So as this 3 year kind of progresses, you are going to find yourself, and this is good, in some kind of spotlight. And you will certainly need to express your alternating fears of failure and success. Yes. If you feel, oh my gosh, I'm not going to succeed, that means you're hesitating. Like for the last 2 years, you have been going through that, thinking through it. So why don't you make these first steps? It's going to be some kind of like release. It's going to be making you feel more comfortable, or who you are, what you are, and where are you now. It's going to be that realistic perspective. Remember the woman under this waterfall. It's kind of like that cleanse. I see myself now. I see myself clearly, right? So this completely a new spectrum of options will open up for you. So it's going to be really important that you're going to see now that you're creating something because you have already created in the past. It was in the back of your head. It was something you noticed, and now the puzzles are coming together, and you are becoming that creative springboard from which you build your future. And you might need to take a few courageous leaps in the dark, as I said. So if you're hesitating to make a first step, and if you're thinking, no, I don't ever succeed, I don't do that, well, no, this time you need to take the step forward, because that is going to completely open this new door. Because fear is really there to teach us. That's what needs to be healed, right? So that's kind of like what is guiding us on that path to develop courage and to know that you're far more capable than you ever allowed yourself to believe. And this is that level of self-acceptance. I am this way. I'm just this way. I'm not trying to be Cindy Crawford. I'm not trying to be Brad Pitt. I'm this way, but guess what? I'm really unique. My kindness, my approach with other people, whatever kind of like works for you, is like something very unique, very authentic for you. So that's going to be part of that self-acceptance. And all of a sudden your leaves will turn to bounds. And this year could turn out to be your most fulfilling year ever. So just remember that courage is not the absence of fear. Just because you're courageous doesn't mean you clear all that fear. So if you're not afraid also, then courage has nothing to do with that. So what courage really is the acceptance of fear and saying, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to get through it, whatever is causing it. So it could also be like, some kind of like financial state that you have to go through it. You're wondering how can you put things together. So it's kind of like moving it forward. That's kind of like really, really going to help. So this is kind of like that part telling you that nothing is going to be really rosy. But this year, among many, many years, is one of the best years. So in addition to courage that is going to be kind of like exercised, it's also going to be a year full of lightness and happiness and innocence and peace and truth and friendship, creativity, communication, dealing with younger people or feeling youthful ourselves. We are going to be more beautiful, and of course that's going to start kind of like shifting our personality into something that is lighter and more optimistic, more loving, and it's going to be way more laughter than we had in a while. Of course, keep in mind, in order to get there, that sometimes that kind of like the opposite can come through it. So also, on the outside, we might see people who will try to put us in depression and sorrow and guilt, gossip, lies, enemies, ugliness. Am I talking about politicians? I guess I must be. As you can see, the reason why year number 3 is giving us all this happiness and lightness, it's simply to be the antidote to all of these kind of like other things. So if you experience this kind of like pessimistic or, rejection or coldness, then these kind of like things have their purpose. Those adverse elements often enter our lives in the year number 3 to show us that we maybe equate happiness with really superficial and shallow things. And this year, because the number 3 is represented in tarot with Empress, and it's very female, it's very feminine energy. It is kind of like being quiet strength, being that light and light beam to the others. So just think about the perfect woman. So of course she's going to be challenged with those rude males or rude partners or partners who just like really want to conquer her. So yeah, she can engage back and just become just like one of them, or she can just like have this like kindness and lightness about her and just say, nope, I'm going to be courageous enough to say no to you. Maybe you're not my only choice, and if you are, I don't want you, kind of a thing. So year number 3 is very, very important as far as relationship. It's not asking you just to go and hook up with somebody. Nope, it's not going to work that way at all. So it actually is going to ask and demand independence. You will want to be independent. It's kind of contradiction. You're going to be actually more successful in a relationship by being independent than actually just trying to find somebody just because it's easier in the two. This is going to be a really, really good fit, because it's going to be an opportunity to love deeply without constantly worrying about what others think. And the more you have the higher self-esteem, the more you approve of yourself and do what you want to do, the more others will accept you as you are, because they'll be witnessing that transformation, and this like pure beauty is going to come through no matter how you look, because you're going to have that authentic confidence. So when this inner beauty is expressed outwardly, it's really, really hard to resist. And we all know people like that who might not even be beautiful on the surface, but their charisma is like so strong. They just like kind of have to put this kind of like smile on their face and they become irresistible. And usually we see that through smile quite a bit of the times. So anybody who will try to kind of like keep up appearances or having any kind of like displays of false confidence or being bullied, that's not going to work. If you want to pretend that you're happy or fearless, that's not going to work. Remember, it's going back to what do I want, and it's going to make you push you through. You need to get there by getting along with the other people, by being kind, by being nice. And that of course means kind of like wiggling through many different people who might still not get this memo. So friends will also play an important role in this year, so make sure that you actually give yourself more time for social interaction, and that's where the independence with relationship is going to kind of come to play, because you will kind of like try to please other people, but you also have to realize that you are important, right? So you shouldn't kind of like spread yourself too thin if you're neglecting yourself. You kind of have to put yourself first and then kind of like give time to everybody, because if you don't pay attention to your friends, then you're going to lose them, because this year is going to be year of abundance. Just like think about it, it's going to be Christmas all year long. This is how it's going to feel. So how would you feel that very, very good friends like you on Christmas? So keep in mind that you're really thinking about everybody, because it's going to be very, very important for kind of like what kind of brownie points you do that in the future. Because you know, courageous is not only being when, you know, when there is a fear or there is a struggle, but what when you really can do it, when there's easy to do it, and then you don't do it out of laziness, or you just become, you know, arrogant because you feel like you're better than anybody else. Keep that in mind, keep that in perspective, because also individuality is going to be very important. You'll be kind of like creating some kind of like new format of who you are. You can kind of like remove these like bad parts or smoothen them, and kind of like understand that the happiness, this new happiness that you're generating, is also partially because you are actually creating this new optimism. And anybody who is going to have a blatant self-interest is just simply going to be kind of like pushed on the sidelines, and they'll be probably waiting on the next cycle, which is going to come in 9 years, to try it again, right? So also, this is a very creative year. It's a year of communication, expression. So you might want to read, or you might want to write a book, but it's also going to be looking at the images and sound and humor and movies. It's going to be really important. It's almost going to be a big stage, right, this year. So kind of like expression in many different elements. Also, as I said, with the rune Vunya reverse, make sure you check the facts for yourself. It's very often in the 3-year that we kind of like really succumb easily to, what do you call it, hearsay, I believe, or somebody who is very loud. You know, just because you're very loud doesn't mean you're right. So that's why I'm saying give it a delay of 3 days. Somebody says I'm authority, question even that, because the truth is likely to be buried beneath layers of deception or misconception, right? So try to keep an open mind. Also, this year could be a year of appearances. So meaning what appears to be the case must be seen for what it is deep down, not just like what it appears to be, right? Just because you have flowers and something looks really nice on the top doesn't mean there's like something really muddy and horrible on the bottom. So just make sure that you correctly understand everything, that you clarify, and that you kind of like are on the same page. And even at that, kind of like still, if you feel that you're betrayed or somebody's like negative, you just like will realize this is just part of the course. Maybe you shouldn't react. Maybe this person is in pain. Maybe this person feels you're going ahead and they are not, and even though it's not your fault, they are being reactive. And take this in account before you actually kind of like deal with other people. Keep in mind that the better person you are, the better everybody around you will become, because it's almost contagious, and this is how good it's going to be. And you're going to really address that feel, as I said, that armor is not going to last. It's going to fall apart. Like, I mean, we have to heal all the wounds. We kind of are generating completely this new body. Remember the woman under the waterfall. We are washing it over. We are healing. Just think about for a moment, God is giving you everything new. New health, new body, new possibility, new start. And even though we are going to have share of our problems this year, we are perfectly able to deal with them. The Empress is the perfect woman. She addresses things wisely, and she's kind of like moving it forward with this gentle touch, this loving and kindness and children and pets and creativity and anything that we can give birth to, such as like, I mean, new things, a new personality, new perspective is going to be really, really important. So the year of optimism, which is very positive, I would just like, I mean, welcome you to enjoy your trip on the tree path, because it's going to be interesting and a creative year to live in. So let's start with the individual signs from this point on. Okie dokie, Sagittarius, let's shuffle these cards. Hello Sagittarians, and welcome to 2019. I'm starting with a quarterly reading, so like first 3 months, second 3 months, third 3 months, and the last 3 months of a year. So that way we can kind of like really kind of realize the bigger picture. So it's a kind of 3-month forecast. Also, what is really, really important here is to understand all the influences that you can see. Then in the second part, we are going to kind of like break it down by category of life, age, career, your personal views, parents, you know, siblings, etc. And the last part is going to be Lenormand. So let's start. I'm kind of like seeing something over here, which kind of tells me you are going deep inside in the very beginning of a year. You're getting this Island card. And the Island card always to me talks about, look at the picture. We are seeing the clouds. We are seeing this almost like glossy water reflection over here. And we are seeing this absolutely unbelievable shred of light over here. So the tree is also definitely something that we just cannot deny watching over here. So it is like really whatever it was, your frame of mind that kind of guided you to see this. And this is kind of like really important, because each one of us maybe noticed different things. To me, and what intuition brought me to was this light, and it was this unbelievable kind of like emergence over here. And even though it is talking about solitude, sometimes the growth, not sometimes, looks like all the time growth comes through solitude, which is sort of like silence, finding time to kind of like figure things out. It's kind of like this hustle and bustle and computer and emails. We just keep rushing through time, and time all of a sudden becomes shorter. With this, you're extending both your understanding and kind of like understanding of time. And that whole alertness that looks like you're almost maybe attached to wires and attached to life, wires of life, it's kind of like telling you you really need to kind of stop and need to give yourself this kind of like gift of kind of like possible withdrawing from the other people, and withdrawing from other people's worries and other people's frustrations, other people's fears, as well as kind of like having the time to address everything that is going through your head. So also, if other people don't want to acknowledge this, you know, that will be really too bad. They will need to honor your wishes. You need to then, if you get into this space, work on any kind of like self-imposed barriers, and kind of like if you spend this time in solitude, just like use it for doing the things that you really enjoy, such as philosophy or meditation, or simply observing the thoughts and emotions that passing through you, especially those that maybe increase your heartbeat, or maybe that you're experiencing shortness of breath, because that's almost like emotional trigger that is happening. So keep in mind that this is really going to help you connecting with who you are. And almost like it's telling me that you actually have someone that you are really, really missing. Because there was like something that has been placed, I would say, on a back burner. And by placing it on a back burner, it just like simply vanished, right? And you really didn't want certain things to vanish. Now, there is like this still connection that I see, that look, she's looking through the window, and partially the window is in color and the other part, I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of like going through some kind of like black and white phase over here. And she is kind of like almost like just simply waking up with the color, right? So I really think that her look through that is like not overly exciting, because it kind of like really feels to this person, well, tomorrow never comes, and no matter what is basically said, things are not going to change, because there's like some kind of like hesitation. There was like issue where somebody was really guarded. There was issue where certain things couldn't expand, and there was an issue about the choice. And the choice, unfortunately, wasn't this all happy and rosy kind of a thing. In fact, things kept being postponed, and maybe you have been seen as somebody who doesn't want it, and hence kind of like they kind of like felt this is basically rejection, or vice versa, right? This really tells me that it was maybe a depression, or just like feeling of incompletion, or feeling of being stuck that you have been really going through. It is very important that you understand that tomorrow, yes, you will be older and you will have less courage, and also tomorrow you'll be more experienced, and also your cunningness will be more, and tomorrow death will come closer. And maybe one person kind of like completely got it, another one didn't, because I see here there was like one person who had enormous sadness, and the other one who simply maybe didn't realize the fantasticness, the fabulousness, probably it's not even word, of what can happen out of it. Look at this pretty unicorn. And Seven of Fire always talks about, you know what, kind of like being guarded and maybe pushing things away and feeling that, hey, I'm doing really well and nothing can happen to me. But this is not exactly what happened. I feel it was a situation that you are maybe going to try to rehash, or you're still connected to that situation, and that situation in one way or the other has to be dealt with. That was like a huge spiritual union. This is that, like, I mean, Two of Cups, the Lover's card, which is then repeating over here. It is something that is going to last the entire year. You have established a connection with someone or something that is really important. If you know that there was a person that you recognized and you still feel that in one way or the other, some people feel still pain, some people feel it's kind of just there. Why is it not going away? Why cannot just use eraser and erase it? Because it was like something that you feel a piece of you kind of like was taken away, it's missing. Because look at this trust. The trust kind of like was pushed out, and because of the trust there were kind of things that were really hard to kind of like deal with. I'm actually wondering here if you feel you have lost faith in someone, or if you feel, if you're kind of going through that, I wonder what would my life be if this kind of happened, because the connection with somebody is really here, but at the same time there is this hesitation and trepidation. Certain things really went wrong. I absolutely see here there is like this huge kind of like connection. So if you don't have anybody, this is really talking about that you have discovered certain things in you, that somebody pushed a button or some event pushed button. Because I'm seeing that here, look at here, I have a 10 and 1 and 19, and 1 and 9 is 1, it's 10, it's 1 again, and then we have this 10 here. There is a shift that is taking place. Also, the chakra that you're dealing with is like the base chakra. It's the beginning. You are kind of like reestablishing possibly new way of dealing with things, how to go through it, in which direction to go. You have a karma, and you have a destiny, and you have a flow, and you have a trust. It is kind of like understanding, look, I have to simply kind of like cut my losses. It sounds to me that it was something that it was really meaningful, that you're going to try to really go back to, really very much. You don't have faith that anything is going to come out of it. And to be honest, this actually also can talk about this person just guarding themselves and saying, look, you know, you had your chance, or vice versa, right? It can work this way. You had your chance, and what happened? Nothing happened, and you were not there for me. Because it looks like it was some kind of like almost impossible situation that was maybe not workable, but one person really got burned. Both people still love each other, but I really don't see here ability to move that forward. It is kind of like really strange. Usually I see this kind of like situation when one party is in a relationship, so this could mean that somebody is in a relationship that is maybe, you know, one of those just arranged kind of like things, or where the love left the building long time ago but the kids are there and this is kind of like really important, or simply that one person just doesn't want to commit and another person can't handle anything of that kind. Because you're getting here in the second quarter. So this first quarter is going to be really spending lots of time questioning yourself, pretty much what you want and pretty much who you are and in which direction you want to go. Do you, like, you guys are such an optimistic sign, and so whenever you end up not being optimistic, not feeling cheery, not feeling enthusiastic, that there is like a energy flow that basically is stuck. And this is like something really important to realize, because can you see the circle here and the circle here and the circle here and the circle here? We are clearly talking about the energy. Remember, this is a year number 3. Year number 3 is about energy. It's about this flow of energy. It's more or less in particular about femininity and creativity. And you do have this Empress card showing up in the third quarter with 6 of fire. So you're going to be taking down the road a few steps back. And Passion Ignited does actually can talk about maybe reconnecting. And I really feel it maybe is going to be just that, reconnecting but not moving forward, but simply kind of like resolving that karmic thing, because there is like something karmically that is happening. So what happens when you do something karmically? And guys, feel free to order my karma reading, because karmically means you might know the person for 5 minutes. Maybe you're standing on a bus station in the rain and you're chit-chatting with a stranger, but the impact is like so huge that you really cannot shake it off. Like, you're getting soulmate card showing up twice. What can I tell you how important that really is? So let me just like really talk about this karma over here, because karma is like a concept in many Eastern religions. It's a Sanskrit word implying those greater universal laws of cause and effect, and it's providing a sort of like implied code of ethics within the structure of what seems to be endless cycles, right? Birth, death, you know, good things, bad things, you know. There's like this movie made, Samsara, which is just simply visual feast, right? But there's like really no drama in it, right? So karma is like really talking about these cycles. So the mistaken notion about karma is that it's some kind of like sort of punishment. We kind of say, haha, karma is getting you, and that kind of like sort of things. But you know, this is not really what it is, because this lifetime is just like a small segment on a huge kind of like tangent, and what we do here doesn't really necessarily reflect right back in this life. So that's why there's like that expression, paying it forward, right? We don't only carry our soul's karma into this lifetime, but it's also embedded in the complex coding of the DNA, right, of our energetic of our ancestral karma. Because, you know, women are going through the same issues, generations are going through the same issues, families are going through the same issues. So this is kind of like a very very basic. DNA is like what we are really made of, and DNA is, you know, what we inherit from our biological parents, and that has a physical component. But karma is like something with a spiritual component, and it is a theory which I subscribe to, that yes, we inherit DNA from our biological parents, but through training we sort of like are trained in their soul. Then we get into maturity, and this is when we start to question it, and finally we get in touch with our soul parents, where we kind of like start finding our path, our way of morality, recognizing, you know, that communication with the higher kind of like self, right? It was sort of like stagnant for about usually first 28 years of the life, and all of a sudden it's starting to manifest, and it's kind of like that difference between fate and destiny. And interestingly, the destiny card showed up, and destiny card is ruled by Jupiter. This is the same card in two different decks. One is up, one is down, and this is exactly how it works. One way is up, and we kind of go through the process of forming the things, wondering if things will work out, how do they work out, and then being on top, and then being on bottom. Well, so what is better, being on top or being on bottom? On bottom. Being on top, actually many people will say it is much better. But what if I tell her that when you're on the top, the only way to go is the bottom, and when you're on the bottom, the only way to go is top? Would you now kind of like shift your perspective? In your case, you will actually experience both, because that karmic wheel will be spinning ridiculously a lot. In the second quarter, you have the card of dedicated effort reversed. So this card to me really talks about, again, we have this soulmate. Again, we feel somebody not willing to participate. I feel that there are like lots of walls that have been erected. So that really means there's like a huge build-in karma that have been kind of like experienced over here. There is like something that you feel unfinished. You feel there's like something that you still need to go and address. I do feel, even though that you don't really think it is you, I really feel that you're going to realize that you need to kind of like take your walls down. Many of you went into here's the wall, and that kind of like was very, very protective. But the wall also prevented you of getting help that you need, of getting soft place to fall. It was a rigid atmosphere which was protective, but it kind of like, it tells you right now that you overstayed your welcome in that kind of situation. You're meant to move. That's why you have all the circular things, because I'm glad to see what's going to happen in the third quarter. Some of you might start a new relationship, completely new relationship, that is going to have indication of all of these things kind of like really being important and prevalent. And you know, at some point, and I really believe that's going to be toward June, you're going to have this situation. It's a very interesting card because there are like so many different things that we can see here. So this gentleman clearly thinks here, oh, made it in life kind of a thing. Look at that. The chair is a little bit too big, right? And sunglasses, but umbrella. We all have this kind of like environments when we're on vacation. We kind of really don't care. He has, what is this, probably pina colada in his hand, right? But he also doesn't have energy to get up or do anything because, hey, I've done it right now. I'm doing nothing. I'm just relaxing. So I really believe that this is clearly saying that message here is that this resort is not your final destination. So the journey isn't over yet. And kind of like this, I don't know if you can see it, this bright white bird that's flying into kind of like the sky is kind of like trying to tell you there's like actually much more you need to see. There's like some kind of complacency over here. Maybe this kind of like came about because of sense of achievement, because you will really feel that things are really going in your kind of like direction, as they will be. You might have a little bit issues in your work life, or on the other hand, you might really be one of those, you know, people who are going to be disagreeable, but because you're disagreeable, you save the day kind of a thing. You know, you're not a sheep, and you see certain things and you speak up about that, and then you're kind of like really enjoying how you actually really feel about it. Maybe you're going to kind of like feel encouraged with this. Because of that, you might kind of like fall into kind of like the situation where you're going to relax, overly relax, or really kind of like feel that you don't need anybody. And that worries me a little bit, because Whether or not this is the person from the past or this is a person that you have just met, it is very important, and I can't stress enough, my dear Sagittarius. Remember, Vunya. Vunya is also belonging to you. This is like the rune of luck. Yes, it is reversed, I know, but luck is luck, up or down, right? It's just like kind of like don't, in your case, it can switch so quickly. So it is really important that you don't take anybody for granted, because look at this. It's obsessing about something that didn't happen, something that was really meaningful, or wondering, why is this never happening to me? And wondering why this didn't happen to me. You're looking through the window where maybe the person is like right here behind your back. You see what I mean? Kind of like, do not lose opportunity just because, you know, you are maybe falling into kind of like self-pity situation. I have to say that I have a few Sagittarian friends, and I have never seen that in my friends, that they actually really go into the depressed state. But when I spoke to them about other Sagittarians, they said yes, they have seen it, and they have recognized that it actually does happen. And it kind of like can be very damaging to Sagittarius. So just imagine your sign is like this big hope and luck and everything going forward. So when kind of like just the darkness started in, it's really not a good time. Here I can see that you're trying so hard to get somewhere, but you're really neglecting somebody maybe else who is trying equally hard to get through to you. So turn around, pay attention to the people who are really giving their effort. If this is not what you want, you need to let them go. It's going to be very important, because in the third quarter I can see that there is like you're back to feeling very passionate. So it almost like feels like that maybe with some person that you really need, you're almost like crossing paths, but timing is not right. You're kind of like continuously switching each other, so one person cannot do it, another person can't or don't want to do it. That's kind of what happens. The walls are being erected, and when the other person is ready, the wall is there, or the other person doesn't even want to knock on the door. Now this is clearly saying don't do anything for others, but make sure that you're sort of like pulling in yourself. That's why you're having the solitude and saying, look, you are lovable, you're deserving of love, you're worthy of love, it will happen for you. It is really clear it will happen to you, but don't take it for something granted. Don't take it, it's really kind of like easy things to do. And hello, my camera, kind of like just please clear. Oh, there you go. So in the third quarter, it might be the switch. It's kind of weird because this card also talks about old lovers coming through it, or making up, or creating new things. But you will need to evoke all the spirits, because I don't know if you can see it here, there are a whole bunch of things happening here. We almost have the energy body, then we have the snake, right? We have the crystals, we have the candle. As you can see, there are like so many different elements over here, the tapestry over here on the wall. So whatever it is, I really feel that this is like sort of almost like a ritual. It says invocation that you need to create. And you guys are one of those nature signs, going out in the nature, enjoying yourself. And I would highly recommend that this also happens in the nature, that you find your own spot. You don't have to have the ritualistic thing or altar, right? Like, I mean, kind of like, you're probably thinking, oh, I'm not a psycho kind of a thing. But even if this is a corner in your room, but preferably outside, because outside your energy actually really is almost like self-evident, that you're almost like a king of the outdoors, I would say. So it is really important to kind of like for you to simply kind of go into that meditation, that solitude, find a place for you, whatever this is, even a park bench. Bring yourself, you know, something that can represent each element. Maybe you have the matches instead of the fire, instead of the candle. Or if you find a quiet place, kind of like bring the matches, bring the candle, light it, right? Bring the crystals that represent the earth. Have, you know, some water over there, and air is there all along. You will feel the wind. So you're connecting with all the elements. And then invocation means kind of like going in, and do not focus on a particular thing. Just focus on, I really feel I'm ready, and kind of like send this out to the universe, right? So kind of like these objects would be really, really important. Breathing in is very important. Breathing and starting to manifest in your eyes. Remember, you have been working on it already in the second quarter. You felt happy, you felt lucky. Try to go back and invoke those feelings because they were already there. And all of a sudden you're going to feel the charge. You actually will literally feel something around your heart that is going to happen, the motion going to happen. It is kind of like really interesting because it's going to take a little bit more than just invocation for you. So I do not want you to give up, because first it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. You will feel maybe it's kind of interesting. Again, like what I'm seeing here, you succeed and then you get lazy. You succeed and then you get lazy. Instead of like keeping the same kind of like zone, keeping the same focus, keeping the same intensity, right, while this is happening. Six of Fire is definitely a card of success. Six of Fire is like when you kind of like go above everybody else. So see what I said, the flow is kind of like upside down, and actually you are going to start to feel, you know what, I am actually creating this all over again. And you're saying to yourself, yeah, I have to keep doing that. It's kind of like at this point a very kind of like coordinated focus. It's not like just all over the place, but you are totally understanding where you need to go. Look at this, is like you are fire sign and you are getting fire and fire and fire and air. Like fire and air, they're like friends. They kind of like really work well together. So this is like your perfect woman. Either you need to improve yourself a little bit more, and I don't mean improve yourself to kind of like become that quote-unquote perfect ideal of the woman that we see in the magazine. No, I mean be the best you can be. I'm talking about soul, I'm talking about expression, and you're going to see how the gates actually open up for you and you feel better and you feel that things are happening. So the whole year is going to be sort of like getting you out of some kind of fog. You kind of like knew your feeling, you realized your feelings, but you really didn't know what to do about that, how to go about it. And look at all the layers that have to happen, that you need to kind of go to the up and to the down on the same situation in order to kind of like connect. And then voila, the last quarter you're getting Tsunami. Well, Tsunami is extremely intense card. I would say in this oracle deck, Tsunami and I would go with Volcano are the two most intense cards. So Tsunami is extremely destructive, right? And that's really what happens when you guys go in depression. And I really feel the challenge for you is like to keep on up and up, and not to go back into kind of like shutting down or having the walls if things kind of like switch its course, if things kind of like go in a direction where you really don't want to go, right? So tsunamis are triggered by the under kind of like currents, and I think undersea disturbance, sort of like typically it's an earthquake or volcanic eruption, and then you kind of like have this series of powerful waves, and I really think that you cannot detect them in the open sea, because that's usually what happened, because from the above everything kind of like looks flat to you, even the big waves. But those kind of like waves kind of like travel under the sea. Most of the time they're like really, really fast, but then all of a sudden as they become being called tsunami, when they start getting quote-unquote more organized, when they start getting closer to the shoreline, then they become higher and higher and higher, and I think their speed goes down from something from 500 miles per hour to 50 miles an hour. So because they go up, right? So because when they go up, they also pull back and go up and pull back, and that's where the people start to see it and they start to run, because they know it's not going to be really easy, right? So this is for you, that part where the water goes up and comes easy. You're getting that wake-up call. It may be in a form of a significant loss. It can be some kind of like dramatic kind of like event in your life. It's generally typically the event that, you know, you're not prepared for. It's going to come to you, but you are being prepared for it all year long. You might be really stunned at first because it's kind of like unexpected, but you will also know it is kind of like time to draw back that you know, curtain of avoidance and denial, and confront the truth that sort of exists in basically subtext of that event. So it might be some kind of like real life drama, and this is like simply, if you wish, all the puzzles fell into place. And what is tsunami? Yes, it is very destructive, but it cleans everything. It's a kind of like clean slate. So it's kind of like often when we look back after something like this has passed, then we can actually see signs that kind of like foreshadow it happening, right? Go, oh my gosh, yes, I was seeing it. How come I did not react when that was happening? This for you is going to be happening in the third quarter, when you feel that you're being stuck. And most of you have creative professions, so creative profession can be anything necessarily. Yes, sure, it can be artists, can be graphic design, but surgeons are also creative, right? Mechanics can be creative. It's just like kind of like finding different ways of dealing with things. But this also can mean, when it's reversed, that it could be a little bit of a clinky attitude. Instead of like really doing things yourself, you're kind of like following somebody, or lulling yourself into that kind of like victory because everybody's telling you you're great, you're la la la. This is going to sound great, but guys, you're destined to be even greater. So remember that, because this is going to shake you up. This is going to be, hey, you know what, you need to operate purely on instinct and pick up on the clues, right? And naturally seek that higher ground before this tsunami approaches, right? So kind of like to negotiate this wake up, you need to closely listen to your instincts, and at the same time look for that higher ground. And I believe it's like some kind of truth or trust, and you need to trust yourself. But you also need to understand that it's, when you have the circle, it tells me that you're actually depending on the other people. And even though you feel that you're on the top, right, it's going to be just like that. You're going to lose something and you're going to win something so much better. The problem is that you might feel still the pain over the loss instead of enjoying the pain over the win. So it is kind of like telling you, go with the flow. Don't kind of like go too much in the past. But this person that is still lingering, or this emotion, or this like something that you really, really want, you need to really work on it every day. Every day have this invocation, meditation, that little kind of like stone that you bring with yourself. Carry it with you all the time, because it's going to be like what they call it, the trigger to kind of like evoke these feelings. Yes, I have to keep going. I cannot kind of like rest. I'm not done. I still have to be this bird, and I still have to open my wings and fly, if you wish. After all, you have this light. Look at that. Isn't this marvelous card? And she's like almost like touching it. This entire row over here is like so dominant with light, because you guys, fire sign, you're light. So some of you may be actually interacting with Leos. Some of you, well, I see basically in all the signs really, but this in particular here, it's like Leo's or Leo's energy. It's kind of like that energy of generosity. It's this energy where the darkness, remember what they said, kind of like really feeling, well, you know, I'm a victim, or certain things have to happen to certain ways, instead of like just taking that really high road and kind of like doing that in a way that not only is pleasant for you, but you kind of like really don't care if you have to measure some kind of like balance on faith for the others. Look at all these ones. Look at all these ones. This is really telling you you're actually starting in a new cycle. So what is important to understand when you're starting a new cycle? It is important to understand that you're now planting a seed, and this is the most vulnerable time for any seed. So you really need to kind of like take care of that. So wake up call is like you're going to see that something is possible. That's most likely what I was going to see, because you have this card, challenging times, but it's reversed, and you have not only one, but you have two circles over here. Challenging times are finally over, guys. And it almost looks like you have been going through something that almost like was impossible. It was not achievable. You didn't feel you can go in that direction. You didn't feel that certain things can happen or might happen, or that somebody would want to have them happen, right? Because keep in mind here, when you see this Empress over here, and that's basically taking us back to the year number 3, right? So here we see the water and the fire, that kind of like alchemy that is happening. That's sort of like this divine light entering from the above, just like as we saw the divine light here, and here everywhere we are seeing divine light as well. So it's going to be really important that you start expressing yourself. So no matter what form of creativity is like native to you, just do something. Even if it means going to a dollar store and buying one of those coloring books, and even following those kind of like paths that is really trigger that creativity. Remember, we do not possess our creations, so it's not that you're doing them to really present them. Even if you just do that for yourself, it's going to be really, really important, because this is basically how you will connect with that divine energy, how you connect with that energy that is like really, really giving. Because when you connect with this energy, you have to understand you are the sign that is basically saddled with luck. And if you kind of like keep being positive, you're going to keep getting much better resolutions, even though at times it might look that you're getting something that is challenging. But this is done because you need to kind of like resolve certain things. And this kind of like brings me to basically conclusion of the very last quarter of the stuff. And here you have 2 of water. There is like this union, there is like this soulmate, there's like really something over here, which could be at this stage the same person or somebody completely new. Because you're also having this intensity card. Look at that. Look at that zoom. Look at that focus. Because you were going up and down of that focus. You were going, should I go? Should I go? Should I stay or should I go? Kind of like motions. But then karma kept pushing you. Karma just didn't let you. And if you got lazy, if you just really wanted to sit and enjoy kind of like the accolades, the wake-up call happens. And the wake-up call is finally going to kind of like really put you almost like in some kind of like manic energy that kind of like drives you from point A to point B. This is also your card. This is the Knight of Fire, and it's most likely to create ripples in the waters around you. Remember, ripples, tsunami? So maybe you are the one who is causing tsunami. Maybe you are the one whose energy is all of a sudden, maybe you're that volcano exploding from underneath and pushing that energy up and saying, I'm coming up, I can do that. Opinions of the others are going to matter very little at you. You are going to really have this huge energy. You're going to feel when this tsunami happens, something is going to shake you up that is totally going to put everything in perspective. Who is important and why? This is not going to be a matter of money. This is going to matter of what is like really important to me and what is the right thing to do. And you are going to have no doubts about it. None whatsoever. So Sagittarius, let's go next and pick up on your different segments of life. So I'm sort of combining astrology and tarot in the second part. Remember from this part that like your goal is like really to work on your base chakra. You are kind of like able to start fresh. Almost like clean the slate, clean the karma, and you're going the new level. So do you really want to make just another run that is identical, or do you really want to create something else? So let's see now how this basically comes down to different. Okay, Sagittarians, I am again having few cards that actually are repeating. So this card is repeating, and almost like really, really important cards that are repeating, and this one here as well. So it is kind of like really important to, I think one more that I see, is it? No, this was more, this was 8 of Pentacles, not 8 of Fire. So let me start. So this very first house is like, which really talks about his passion. It kind of like really tells me that some of you just gave up. Ace of Rods in this particular case came reversed. This first house talks about I am, sort of like appearance and outward personality. And everybody knows that you're passionate, but also everybody knows that maybe you can become very impassionate, and kind of it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. This is really something that you need to really work on. Remember, in the third quarter, you're going to fully activate. And that's why this is really showing up here. It's going to be 50-50 kind of a thing with you. So it's really important for you to pay attention to the small things. And it's going to talk about how you dress, how you present yourself, how you know, express yourself. So even though you kind of like maybe say the things that are very positive, maybe your actions are not very positive. So you really have to look into that. The second house is your house of what you have, your personal resources, money and possessions and values and skills. So you're going to be really, really good in communicating. You have like this 8 of Pentacles. Just make sure that you communicate on time. If somebody asks you things, that you really get back to them in a really kind of diligent way. I do see that there's possibility for delays. Maybe you're going to get frustrated that somebody's not getting back to you, and kind of like that kind of comes to play. I'm again seeing this repetition of these people. They're having a Page of Pentacles, Queen of Cups, Queen of Pentacles, and Knight of Rods. So I have like these 4 people that, if you really think about it, look, they're almost like forming a cross over here. So remember how I said that you did have the spiritual union, but something was happening that kind of like prevented it. And I really feel, and this is really showing it over here, it's the outer world, that it was like something about reputation. It was something about taking power, that some of you could have been married or been with somebody who was married, and the things actually really didn't happen because of the children, just like as I assumed. I am seeing that clearly, very nicely over here, because I'm seeing this Queen of Cups. That's like your spiritual union. That's your mental activity. You're really, really thinking about somebody. It's kind of like really weird, because you're thinking of this person in a very nice and gentle way, of somebody who in kind. Maybe this person is an animal lover, and maybe they touched your heart in some way. But at the same time, you really resent this person and resent something that's happened. And I really think this is mostly because there's like lots of suffering that happened. But it sounds to me, it's just like entire situation. It looks like everything was flying from all directions, and you needed to duck, and everybody kind of like took that against you. And that's kind of like what really talks about this, because that feeling of inner security was almost impossible to maintain. When did that come reversed? And this is coming in your house of nurturing, right? And how do you deal with things personally? You might be dealing with a Scorpio though, or with a water sign, and maybe that water sign might be very, very maybe suffering. And I really feel, if you're dealing with a water sign, that you're going to let go, especially if this person is a Scorpio. That kind of like is the something that cannot be sustainable. And this could be also that there are issues with your parents, because that also covers your parents over here, or simply some kind of like really things that maybe have been very deep and just like didn't reach any kind of solution. Hi, Savi. Hi, girl. Do you love Sagittarians?
No.
How much?
No.
That much? The best? You best? I love you. So I really think that you feel a huge guilt, whether this is you, that you have been the one who is leaving somebody, or that somebody demanded of you that you have to change the situation. There was like somebody who did a decision that they really felt was the best at this time. This really resulted basically in them staying in a situation which could be you, which was not the situation that you really wanted. Because look at this, you have these 2 sixes. This is that, again, the soulmate that I see it over here. It was like a really, really hard decision to reach, and it was like almost impossible. even though at the time you felt that you did the right decision and almost like blamed this person, hey, you left me out in the cold, I was willing to do all of that. Well, their timeline and your timeline, or vice versa, they were not in sync. And this is like exactly what has been happening. So this is the house of that serving house of romance and children and fun and creativity, and it was just a simple decision that you really wanted to do. And this could be that you've been dealing with somebody who you know for quite a while, and just like things just like couldn't materialize. And in the end, you actually almost like resented all the situation, everything that happened. Usually when this card shows up, I'm always connecting this card for doing something that is not morally acceptable or societal acceptable. So hence, and I know marriages these days don't mean much, right? Marriages simply means let's sign the paperwork to have the kids, and it shouldn't really be this way. And people have to define what basically it means for them. But I definitely see that other people were taken into account by making this decision, and that one person simply didn't want to have anything to do with that. I mean, I'm seeing water, I'm seeing earth, I'm seeing Scorpio, and I'm seeing Aquarius over here clearly showing up. It kind of like situation really affected, as I said, remember how I said it kind of really left you almost like wondering, what do I do for the rest of my life? What now? How can I do it now? Where at this stage I think you'll be really looking down and reassessing, kind of like, hey, maybe I didn't really do the good thing. But you also need to be proud about the decisions that have been made and that have been done, because to some extent right now it looks like you're actually kind of like working on that self-improvement. You are working in kind of like getting into that zone, right? You might not feel entirely 100% there, but there is absolutely shift happening and shift coming your way. Then you're having this house number 7, which is really, really important. And this kind of like really tells me that, there was like something about the marriage, because the 7 is the house of partnerships and marriages. And like something for you looks here hopeless. And I really think this is the reason here, is because there is like this huge connection with this person. And I can see that here as well. And this is like something that is really, really karmic. So you have to understand that it cannot be that way. You might meet somebody who would kind of like send you on that basically path. And this is kind of like for these people come into our life. They're messengers. They kind of like tell us, hey, you need to really work on it. So there is like something that you still have unfinished. There are like 2 or 3 different people that I see, most likely 2. And one of them has almost like prominent role in terms of status. Another one has a prominent role in terms of emotions. So this is like, what they say, head or heart. And that's exactly what this person is doing, right? So one person could be really an air sign. Clearly, the Queen of Pentacles doesn't have to necessarily be an earth sign, but that could be like that kind of like tradition, longevity, everything happening. Person saying, come on, don't be foolish. We have children together. We need to do that. That kind of stuff. So it's kind of like feeling, look, I cannot be self-indulgent, kind of like over things. Because to some extent, some of you, and that's why, remember, they kept telling you, look, you just cannot let go. You just cannot say, well, fine, for the rest of my life, I'm just going to put one foot in front of another. Well, sorry to say, but destiny has completely different plans for you. Destiny is saying, my dear Sagittarius, that tsunami is going to happen, that wake-up call is going to happen, and you have to keep doing certain things. Yes, maybe you're not going to feel that things are in complete balance. This is the house of sex and death and letting go. And it's really, really going to be the year where you need to kind of like bring this equilibrium, where, you might be giving and giving and giving, right? And not feeling that you're getting anything back. Or taking and taking and taking, and feeling, like I'm in guilt over that. It's going to be really weird in this way. I'm more or less tending to think that you'll be giving a lot, right? And you have to ask yourself, are you buying love? you really have to ask yourself if you are kind of in that situation, because again, I see here is the matter of children, it's the matter of things that happened in the past, it's the matter of things that kind of like are almost like karmic, that you see, when I see this card, it tells me that maybe two people got together on a high school reunion that maybe never seen each other as a potential kind of like couple, but you know, something like that happened and they clicked, and then the karma got activated. It's almost like was that stagnating seed, and puff, all of a sudden it started to blossom, it's coming out, and things happen. This person was containing that message that has to happen, it has to come your way. And that's why here, like you see, that's kind of like achievement for you, is like almost looks like, well, you know, when kids are out of home, then I can actually do different things. But you also have to remember there are other people who have been maybe faithful, who have been doing things for you, and everything is going through your head. And when you kind of like get in the situation, you kind of like feel burnout. That's why there's like time alone, that solitude, meditation, invocation is going to be very, very important. You literally are going to go step by step and getting out of some situation that it looks like it's really not tolerable for you. It almost looks like there are lots of arguing in some situations that you have, and that's not necessarily where you want to be. This is also falling in the house of your friends and groups and goals and aspirations, and again, it's a huge indecision that is taking place, and everything revolves over what motivates you. So ensuring that you keep being motivated all year like along is really, really important. And this is basically that house of solitude, the house of transcendence, but also the house of self-sabotage. And there is like a tendency to kind of like sabotage yourself, but there is also kind of like universal order that at the end of the year, around your birthday in 2019, things are going to be looking much, much different than from they are now. You're not going to recognize yourself looking at yourself now in a year from now, but you're going to remember that once before you have been this way, you have been this free, you have been this enthusiastic, and all of a sudden you're actually going in this direction. So let's right now check your Lenormand so we can put that all in the proper basically time frame, and just like see what more information we can get from that. Okay guys, so let's see that a little bit more from kind of like the lower level and see what can actually happen here. There are like two significators, the lady and the gentleman, and these two significators can be either or, can be you or the other person, and you don't have to be necessarily female. If you're female, it can actually be interchangeable. Both of the significators can be you. I'm seeing repetition of some themes. You have again the Sun card, especially you ladies. You're going to be really kind of like having that kind of like beaming situation, and that's going to start between June and October for you next year. I really feel that some of you might even change your residence. Certain things that can happen sort of like mid next year when you really go into this ignite phase may really kind of like send you off on the path where you're just going to be joyful. Some of you might even get pregnant if that's what you want, and especially the people who kind of cannot get pregnant. You're not going to play it safe anymore. You're just going to say, look, I have to figure out something long term. So even though it might feel like it's that tsunami pulling back kind of like a thing, this is in order to kind of like really kind of like have this kind of like force going forward. Another theme that is clearly emerging over here is again this kind of like putting the ending to something. It kind of looks like there was like a dating and something was really, really healthy that kind of like ended up in this coffin, and coffin is something permanent, something that happens, something had to kind of like finish. Coffin is in the house of a dog, and dog is also on the same tangent over here. So even though something ended, like maybe like there's like still some kind of like loyalty, because look, I see this triangle over here, and there was like something with the child, or the child was the obstacle, but the child can also means that things from the past are now resurfacing, and that they're kind of like important again. And that's what I saw, this whole lingering. You see, especially here we also have the clouds, and it could be some communication. This is kind of interesting. The clouds is in the house of the letter, and also the letter is right next to it. So what are the chances? So it could be some communication. Maybe some person also lost a job, because I see that here, especially if you're male Sagittarian, that could be really evident. But I'm also seeing here that this letter can be to clear certain things up. It could be just simply I don't know, confession. It could be simply kind of, hey, you know, how are you doing? I really want to clear this situation. It's one of those, you know, closure letters, but not necessarily written as closure, written like as a hope that something kind of like continues happening. Again, I see here the whip, and the whip can actually really talk about this intensity. And you guys are the sign of enthusiasm, as I said, but also travel is guided with Sagittarius, right? And I actually see that very much. And there's going to be lots of communication, lots of things going on in that direction. Your work is going to be very, very important in 2019, actually. Women are not going to have big issues at work. It almost looks like it's going to relatively be uneventful, other than one situation where you might have a person, possibly female, possibly around 40s, that is spreading rumors or talking badly about you. And that is going to be the challenge that you need to kind of like work. So if this is something that you feel is hard to kind of like overcome, you're simply going to just like change your position. Some of you may even move, and some of you can even kind of like go and spend some time overseas, or you have some kind of contact or connections overseas, and that is going to be very, very important. So in the immediate kind of like vicinity, I'm seeing that certain things, and it's kind of like interesting that the coffin is happening in the house of a dog, right? So it kind of gives you this picture of the little doggy kind of like really crying on the owner's grave. And that's basically, again, links me back to think, hey, you know, something is over, but it wasn't over. It reminds me of that famous scene from the Notebook. Remember how she comes back, and maybe I shouldn't say, this is a spoiler alert, I'm not going to tell you actually what happens. And those of you who actually watched it, you know, and kind of like you said, it was never over. So you guys who didn't watch it will not know where this basically is happening. So it is kind of like really what is really important. But also when I see whip and coffin kind of like coming here together, right? It's really fighting for the loved one. And I really think, like, I mean, there is going to be something, oh my gosh, did I lose you? It's almost like something that lasted a long time, but it felt like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do better. Every day became just like the other, and I just kept shifting. It's kind of like maybe depression, but it kind of like felt, well, I'm just a zombie. I am lifeless. I'm alive, but I'm lifeless. And this is maybe why this year you're being really, really asked to kind of like really mobilize your energy, really kind of like do things, and really kind of like understand the bigger picture. And it's kind of like really interesting what is going to happen, because the lilies is falling here in the key, right? And the key here is like in the sun, and sun goes back to basically house of the female. So which means, and it's interesting also because it's right next to the gentleman, so I do see a revival of something from the past. And that something from the past could have happened as a work connection. It could have happened as a connection between in the same circle of friends. And finally, this kind of like letter has to bring some kind of clarity. I'm not completely sure who is going to send this letter, because you guys joining each other in this letter thing. But it was that is really talking about what happened. It kind of like looks like that it was a long time that had to heal. It looks like the guys were dating, but the women didn't. The women were like really working on their own health in a completely different way, maybe dedicating to the family, to their child, whatever it is, a furry child or the real child, and just like simply kind of like pushing kind of like along. Where I do see that males, who maybe are the second part of that equation, have been dealing with, okay, so let me forget this, I'm going to date, but dating didn't kind of like resolve that. Like nobody managed to ignite that flame, nobody managed to kind of like bring things to the surface. But there is like this person over here who doesn't want that union to happen. This person is maybe the one who kind of like has some influence in terms of money. So yes, that can be a boss from work, but that can be maybe ex-wife who wants more child support, or ex-husband, or somebody who simply doesn't want these two people to come together. Because it almost looks like there could be another woman, not so much man, because they are both on the same tangent. So that person needs to be overcome, because look at this. You're walking down on your path, you're hitting that snake. And you're trying to kind of like go around and you hit the mountain, which is even worse. So you need to kind of like backtrack, and that's why this letter. And it's kind of like, look, you know, why don't you resolve things? I don't need to resolve things for you. You kind of like figure out what you want and let's go. The lady is in the house of the flowers, or the bouquet, which is over here position. And this is again going back to these paths. It's kind of like, where do we go? And this is almost like, looks like it's going to beginning, and that's what we saw. If you remember in the quarterly, I saw the spiritual union right out of the gate, and I see it here as well. But I did see that it didn't happen, or something fizzled out, or maybe it was just a closure, and maybe this is why this letter is showing up. But then I saw it happening all over again, because look, in the house of the heart you have the ring and anchor. So it's finally in the key and anchor and ring together. It is like something karmic that you just can't the entire year get out of your head and forget. It is like that important to you. So it's going to be a really spiritual year. Remember that invocation card. It's very important that you're like daily focused on what needs to be done, because this time and this year you're going to really realize how important it is to kind of like think about things in that way. And lastly, my dear Sagittarius, I'm going to grab one more card for advice. And that advice is going to be, if you need to remember one thing and one thing only, what you need to remember. However, I'm also telling you that probably you should go from time to time. Like, I mean, this link is going to be open to you the entire year. And check this, because each and every time you're going to get more and more messages. Some people actually come and ask me for their private reading, and private quarterly, private annual. This is certainly a possibility. But this reading also can give you an unbelievable amount of information, and please take advantage of that. So you're getting one ring circus reversed. So let's see what's this all about. And this is what it says. If you think that the sun won't rise without you, then it's time to change. Perhaps you believe no one will be there to help you, or you expect that you have to do all the work, emotional or otherwise. This is a fear-based idea and only serves to alienate you from others by taking away their right to participate. Receiving the One Ring Circus card may indicate the misuse of power. Remember, I have mentioned that. Don't feel too powerful when you're on the top. You can alienate others by taking away their right to participate. So don't be controlling, don't order things around, just kind of like be part of the process. Receiving the One Ring Circus card may indicate the misuse of power. Give it up. Let go of the need to control how the wind blows and let others play their part. You don't need to be invincible, have all the answers, or be the savior. Things will get done if you step out of your own way. Yet another meaning for this card suggests that someone else may be trying to control you. This needs to be addressed. Don't be afraid to set a boundary. This is a wonderful step to interdependence. Consider the example of two trees planted side by side, sharing the sunlight equally, neither overshadowing the other. So guys, it is possible to find something that will coexist, and somebody will not get their wishes fulfilled, but that's not going to be you. That's all I'm telling you. And I really think, like, after all this time, it's getting to you that you need to follow your own star. If you wish, you need to kind of like go in that direction and kind of like figure out if it's still possible to kind of like dig something out and work on it. But this time you would really make sure that you don't lose this person, even though I have to tell you the first run might be kind of like tricky. So this is clearly telling you, do not try to control somebody, do not try to control the outcome. And when you do that invocation, just like do it in a sense, look, just like I'm open to kind of like new directions. So my dear Sagittarians, I really hope this was useful. I really hope you have a wonderful year. I do feel that the sunshine will shine and there is a new beginning and you're going to feel on top of the world. Do not lose the sight that you have to work on it as well, and that's going to push you further in the new phase of your development. Thank you again very much for your order, and until the next year, I wish you all the best. I love you.